L'Entrepreneur Academy Live 2021 is going to be the biggest and best one yet. Saturday, November 13th in Novi, Michigan. This year's speakers are a who's who of the industry. Greg Woodstock, Corey Ballard, Keith Kalfas, Mark Parker, Caleb and Brittany Almond, Paver Pete, Brian and Liz Fullerton, and Jeff Joyner. Do whatever you have to do to make it. The L'Entrepreneur Academy Live 2021. Tickets will go fast. Get yours today at l'entrepreneuracademy.com.
You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It's your host, Brian Fullerton, here hanging out with you guys. Guys, we're going to jump right on into it. We have on line 2 a guest interview, and this man needs no introduction. He is one of the funniest guys that I've already got to have some quick conversation with. And we are hanging out today with Mike Pennington, a.k.a. Paver King. What's up, brother? How you doing today?
I'm well, brother. I'm excited to be on.
Absolutely.
I always have a lot of fun on these things, and I'm excited to be on, talk to a slightly different audience maybe than normal podcasts I'm on. So that's great.
Yeah.
It's good to diversify.
Well, this will be fun because I got to hear your episode with Caleb Allman. A lot of you guys know Caleb with the Hardscape Academy, his wife Brittany and them. And it was such a banger episode. And I was following you because of Caleb. And I didn't know you exist. And, you know, social media brings so many of us together, right? And I was laughing so hard listening to your guys' show and your episode because you had all these power statements, all these power sayings, and you're just a successful hardscape contractor. And I said, man, I got to get Mike on the show. And graciously enough, you made some time available, which we super appreciate. If you can, do you mind getting these guys up to speed? Maybe just like a quick minute or two snapshot about who you are, where you're at, what you guys are focused on right now with work. And then we're going to have a lighthearted conversation here, getting to hang out with Mike over for the next half hour.
Yeah, no problem. So my wife and I own Paver King Limited, for lack of a better term, at Paver King. Mm-hmm. We always joke that we have the only company that's named after an Instagram account as opposed to a company that's Instagram account that's named after your company. So, which is kind of an interesting turn on things. We have a hardscape division where we do residential hardscaping, and we have a trucking division. We have 2 triaxle dump trucks and a tandem bin truck. And we have a commercial landscaping division that mostly supplies 1 or 2 clients with experienced crews on large-scale commercial construction.
Okay.
Landscape construction, which is sort of where my background lies. It's sort of where I started originally, was in like large scale ICI construction landscaping. So
wow.
Sort of falls into where I started. And I have a very good friend that owns one of the biggest companies in Ontario. So it's a good match for us.
Yeah. And you're over what part of Canada are you in again?
We're from Ontario, in Toronto, up north.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
We're just north of the border, just north of Buffalo.
Okay. There you go. Well, this will be a fun episode. I love, if you guys are not following Paver King, I'm already going to do a quick plug for his Instagram. If you get nothing out of this episode, which I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of good stuff, just make sure you give our boy here a follow at Paver_King. One of the funniest accounts, you're like a character. You're like a personality out there, you know, and you guys do incredible work and impeccable work. I'll definitely say that. But one of the fun things as well is to just watch your Instagram, and you had made another story this morning, and you're so relatable with the things you say and the things you quote, and it gets me laughing every time. Half of my reposts come from you lately, I feel. So it's going to be a fun episode. But I want to know like your guys' business story, your history, and then also your pet peeve with decks. You know what I mean? Because you're a big patio guy. So, yeah. But it's going to be a fun episode. So. let's do this really quick. Before we go down the rabbit hole, we'd like to hear from the show sponsors and updates and announcements. We're going to hear from that. We got some bills to pay, right? And then we're going to come right on back and hear a little bit more from Mike Pennington here with Paver King and his startup story. So hang tight, guys.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to shovel. I don't even have a snowblower. Nobody to plow me. Oh, my God, and the neighbors suck. They don't help. Oh, my God, what am I going to do?
Do you want to keep the cash flowing this winter? Head over to L'EntrepreneurAcademy.com and check out all of Brian Fullerton's new courses and powerful resources to get you cashing in on that white gold through plowing snow. The Snow Plowing Training Course is easy to understand, and you'll learn what it takes to do the job effectively and how to bid, price, and estimate snow plowing for both residential and commercial properties. L'EntrepreneurAcademy.com has 3 new resources to take the hassle and guesswork out of securing your snow removal jobs, plus there's eye-catching marketing materials that can help you secure new clients quickly. Ready to crush the snow game this year? Visit L'EntrepreneurAcademy.com or use the link in the podcast description.
All right, guys. Well, hey, let's go back into Mike's story here with Paver King. Now, like you said earlier, Mike, you are one of the first businesses that you saw on Instagram that you actually came up with your business name first and Instagram second, which I thought was really funny. So you've been doing patios and hardscaping and whatnot in construction for how long has your career been so far? Because I feel like you've been doing this for 15 or 20 years already.
Yeah, well, I started in 1987.
Wow.
I think that yeah.
I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you when I was born. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. I'm old, man. That's totally true. Like I think that sometimes because our I find interesting that people we obviously people follow us on Instagram and then they meet you or you see them and people have this impression that I'm obviously younger than I really am, but really I'm 48. I started when I was around 14 years old.
Okay.
So it's been a long go. There's been a lot of different reincarnations of, this is my third, it's hard to say. This is my third time building a business.
Okay. Okay.
So I started off, my friend's family owned a garden center and we were, just started high school and we needed jobs and shoveling dirt. And this will age me right here, but shoveling dirt into bags paid $5 an hour, and working at Subway paid $3.85 an hour.
Okay.
So I chose shoveling dirt into bags. Didn't know that would shape my future, but
yeah.
I started off at the garden center, and then like now, back then there was still a labor shortage. So part of the garden center there was a commercial landscape contractor that my friend's uncle ran, as well as his grandfather ran the garden center. And so we always ended up, they would come down in the trucks and they would be like, you guys are coming with us today because we got no one to do whatever super lousy thing had to be done.
Right.
And so that's how we ended up out on the job site. Because there was no labor back then. It's not like it's not a new problem, I guess, would be what you could take away from that. So I ended up working there, and then I actually, I've always struggled at school. It wasn't my thing. I don't learn well sitting in a classroom, which I'm sure, I think a lot of people that are in this business are probably like that. I don't.
Yeah.
It was never my thing. I wasn't good at it. I always felt like I was maybe like not smart. And then once I got out in the field with these guys, and I'm good at logistics and figuring out the best path of getting things done. And it didn't take very long before I had my own crew and I had my, people working under us. And it was a place where I felt comfortable and, a place where I guess I felt like I could be successful. And so I kind of I stuck through that. I stuck that job out all the way till I went to college. I took advertising because it was the first thing in the catalog. I'm sitting in high school in the guidance counselor's office and they say to me, you gotta go to college. And I'm like, okay, don't feel like this is a great match for me. They're like, no, you gotta go, you gotta pick something. So I literally opened the book and advertising was the first thing in there. So I was like, oh, sign me up for that.
Okay.
And then I got in. My mom and dad were like, you better go.
Yeah.
You got to set an example for your younger brothers. I was like, okay, advertising this. So I do have a college diploma or degree in advertising administration.
Okay.
That I've never used, which is interesting.
Right.
But which maybe that's why I'm good at social media from that 2 years there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm good at social media either. That's all, like, give or take.
Well,
and then I ended up. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you're like, if anybody's good at social media. I just think most social media is like somebody you resonate with and you relate to. And I don't try to impress anybody with my social media. Frankly, I'm the most least impressive guy you probably have met out there. I just like having fun and poking fun at things that need to be poked fun at, and try to hang out, have fun. And that's every time I watch your Instagram stories or your feed when it pops up. I just get a good chuckle. So I think that's why so many folks are following you. You have 20,000 people following you. And the funny thing is I see you quoted everywhere too, so that's like how that your brand, I guess, if you would say, is like even permeating out there in the ecosystem. Because I see all these different hashtags, the Hardscape cartel and all these different things all over the place, which cracks me up. But anyway, keep going. So you had your degree in advertising and whatnot. And what were you, like 18, 19, 20 years old then? And then you were going...
early 20s. And then I ended up working on the commercial side for a really long time.
Okay.
I ended up leaving the garden center area and I ended up working on the commercial side, running a crew for a long time, being a truck driver, operating equipment. And then I ended up I worked closely with the landscape architect at that company. He ended up starting his own company and I moved with him. And then we started a lot of people that know me online know me from Lake Ridge. That company was started with Dean and I, and from there, I on the weekends I started lifting and relaying pavers.
Yeah.
And with my, we're still close. We've been close since he came over from Trinidad. He's still in a lot of my stories.
Wow.
Kaz. We started lifting and relaying pavers on the weekends. We we ended up leaving and we went out on our own. And one of the things I think is interesting about my story is that, like, I built this, just as 2007, 2008, we'd been in business for a bit. We had a whole season sold out. I was always good at business, but not good at life. So I ended up leaving that business. I went back to Lake Ridge, and then after a year of getting my life sorted out, I ended up starting a residential division there, and that's sort of where the social media started for me. So that's where people kind of know me afterwards. And okay. I built well over a 7-figure residential division at that company after I'd left the other one. And then 2017, Dean and I had a falling out, and I ended up leaving there for multiple different reasons. And I became PromoCon rep for about 18 months, and quickly concluded that I think it was a great job, and it was I was in a bad place, and to work with a bunch of people who were just nice to me. I didn't know that there was people that would be supportive, and it was nice. But after 18 months, I knew it wasn't for me. And so this is my third stab at having my own thing kind of again.
Sure.
Starting from scratch. We started with just a shovel. So this is my third go at it. We're in our third year full time. Paver King Limited is in its third year full time. So
wow.
I mean, I feel like we're on a good track. I think we have an amazing staff. I think that we have I said this in Caleb's podcast. I've hung my hat pretty hard on diversity in your workforce.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people know me for sort of promoting women in construction and having a diverse workforce. And I feel like we have a great team because we have a very diverse workforce at Paver King.
Yeah.
And I think that we're set up well to move forward. I think for me in life, you have to watch your history. And I always feel like I get to the top of the mountain, I build something, and then I think I like the climb better than the rest of it. So I'm being really careful this time to make sure that I don't somehow submarine myself back down to nothing so I can start to climb again. I don't know if that's a personality trait people have, but that's happened to me twice already where I've started with nothing and built an over 7-figure company division or company, and then started again.
Wow.
So I'm hoping this time I'm hoping that I have a better mindset with myself and I have a better people surrounding me. I think I have made a lot of better choices this time when we started.
Yeah. Now, are you guys more focused on residential construction now, or because that's what you said you were, rocking and most familiar with? But no right or wrong answer. But what's the scope of the work that you guys are doing day to day?
So we have a residential division that does mostly, larger scale residential projects. We have a great team of subcontractors that help us with some of our residential contracts. And Kelly, my wife, who runs our office, is a project manager, and Nancy Green's our designer.
Yeah.
So we have that sort of division. And we do some of the residential work ourselves, depending on schedule and how busy we are. I would say that that's probably 30% of our revenue. And then probably 20% of our revenue is the trucks, although we added 2 trucks this year. So adding 2 trucks, by the time we get to the end of the year, we'll have to see how that pans out for the revenue. Because now we have 3 trucks. And then the rest of our revenue comes from supplying experienced management and labor on large scale commercial construction jobs.
Okay.
Because I think if people think it's hard to find residential landscapers, finding people to manage your really large scale commercial construction work, which is really the first companies I worked for, that's all they did. Was the first time I did any residential work was when I was like lifting and relaying pavers for myself, because to do commercial construction, you have to have a big bankroll. That's just reality.
Right.
And I don't have those kind of deep pockets, or I didn't. So we started off doing residential work because you finish, someone pays you. You don't sit on hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting to get paid for 60 or 80 days, which is often the case with commercial
Right.
work.
Amen.
I get a ton of DMs because people see the kind of large scale projects we're working on, and I'm like, everyone wants to be a part of those projects till they find out they don't get paid at the end of every week.
Right. Right.
I always find that an interesting analogy. I'm sure in terms of lawn care, that's the difference between cutting residentially and cutting commercially too. Paid schedule.
100%. That's one like nugget I always talk about with commercial lawn care and landscaping. If you can help it, is make sure that you try to talk about those terms of getting paid every net 30 or worst case scenario net 60, which sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I remember your episode with Caleb, you guys talking about payment terms, and Caleb and Brittany do a lot of stormwater management, right? And they said there's times where they don't get a check for 60 to 90 days, sometimes 120 days. I think Caleb was also interviewing Alicia Brensel with Brex Enterprises, and she said a lot of the massive oil and pipelines that they do, they're not getting paid for 3, 4, 6 months. And so imagine doing $100,000 jobs all day long, and big machinery, tons of payroll. And she goes, that's where organizing and budgeting and following up with that makes all the difference. Let me ask you this. Pretty cool startup story. Appreciate you sharing all that. I just I'm impressed with the work you do, and your 20, 30 years in the industry, in the business. What decks versus patios? That's my question. I'm a lawn care guy, right? Okay. And so I see decks everywhere by us. I see patios everywhere by us. Not that one's better than the other, but I think your verdict is that you prefer patios. What's the there's so much to unpackage here, but what's the patios versus deck conversation?
So for me, the patio versus deck conversation, which I think, obviously, I think anything on the internet gets, for me, the patio versus deck conversation is simply that no deck ever paid my mortgage. It never paid my bills. I never built one. It's never helped me in any way. And every time I see someone building a deck, I'm like, man, that's some work I couldn't have done. Right. And I feel the same about basement renovations, kitchens, roofing. It's just that decks seem to be, from my Instagram people that follow me, there's obviously a conflicting thing there. If I was out saying, screw kitchens, no one would care on my Instagram. But, I feel the same about all of it. Every time I see any kind of home renovation, I'm like, man, they should be building a patio, because patios are what pays my mortgage and is going to pay for my kids' school. So, right. I think that's that's sort of where, and then obviously it caught on, and I like that kind of stuff. So I mean, I'm sort of the FDEX. Now I'm the FDEX guy on Instagram. Well, I don't know if you swear on this podcast. So
I don't honestly care if you do. I don't, but I don't believe him out if you do. It's the Unfiltered show. Most of our audience is volunteer army. You know what I mean? But the funny thing is you're brash on Dex, and I laugh so hard. Like I try to keep a lot of my content, pretty Disney, in terms of like language, just because there's so many younger kids that watch and listen and all. And I just wanted to make sure that it's, broad appealing. But what you type and what you say is how I think about so many different things. And so many of you guys listening to the show, it's so funny. Like, can I read off some of these? Would you mind? This is from your feed.
No, go ahead, man. Whatever you like.
All right. So if you guys aren't following along, Mike here has the award-winning, memes and statements of the lifetime. So let's go through a few of these. These are just some random ones I grabbed before we jumped onto the show, right? It said, if you're a flat earther, do you still believe that 2% slope is needed on a patio? Hashtag Hardscape Mafia. Another one you did. These are like golden, by the way, every one of these. Hey, Paver King, my concrete is cracked. What should I do? Regret not getting pavers.
That one I like.
That one's funny.
I like them all.
We got another one here. Skills mastered during the great hardscape materials shortage of 2020. How to become amazing at apologizing for things that aren't your fault. That was the story of everybody last year. Nothing was in stock, right?
Absolutely. I think that was some of this stuff is super relatable to the moment,
100. That's why it's so funny. It's like I just crack up every time I see it. One was if I combine a poured concrete patio and a deck, what would I get? And you said double the disappointment.
Absolutely, you get double the disappointment,
dude. Like I live my life vicariously through memes and funny statements like this. Like Liz and I literally like communicate in memes nowadays. Somebody said, hey, at Paver King, I'm headed to the lumber yard. What should I get? And you said directions to Techo Block. Is somebody out there right now who makes decks for a living? Relax. Okay. We're just having some fun here. You said,
you know what? Honest, man, like,
go ahead.
I've never had a negative interaction with anyone. I honestly, no, like online, like I've never had anyone be like, message me. I think that maybe I'm lucky. I haven't gotten the hate that a lot of people get online, but I've never had anyone in the deck community message me and be like, "You're a total jerk, man."
Yeah, you're wrong.
I think that everyone knows.
Right. Well,
it's fun. Yeah. Like, oh yeah.
I'll tell you this: the home we're looking to build here any minute now, and then as we build our back, patio and landscaping, outdoor living space, there's no decks anywhere by our stuff. I am not a fan of decks. I see the effort that people put into stripping them, staining them, washing them, cleaning them, painting them. Replacing things. I'm not a big fan of decks. I know nothing about decks and very little about patios, but I'll tell you what, I unless it's like the Trex decking or above, you couldn't convince me to get a deck. Just where I live in like middle class subdivision America, every other deck is falling apart and looks like garbage around here. And so any which way, I have one or two more here I gotta mention. Somebody said, hey, at Paver King, what is your least favorite Christmas carol? You said Deck the Halls.
Absolutely.
This is a really fun one. This will hit close to home for all my yard bug versus LMN versus jobber. This one was good. If you're an open graded base user who recently finished a permeable paver or permeable patio and just signed up for LMN, how do you decide which one to wedge into the conversation first? Oh, these are good. Maybe you guys will.
That a lot of stuff, like I see something and then I was reading something and it was like, if you're a CrossFit person who's gluten free, what do you talk about first?
Oh God. So true.
And then when I saw it, I was like, man, this is just like, because in the winter, like landscape Instagram is so different in the winter.
Yep.
It's like,
it's
amazing to watch the change.
Yeah. I get.
It's all about.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's all about sort of open graded base and friggin' LMN, and I have no problem with any of those things. I just
sure.
It started this winter. It became kind of like gluten-free vegans crossfitting to me. It was an intense winter of those things. So
I bet Liz and I literally can tell the time of the year, because if people is going to make a troll video or a hate video on me or poke fun at me or any of my content, we always notice it's in February or March, because that is the least busy time of year, and they always come out in February and then usually July or August. It's been a minute. Nobody's made one just yet. So kind of somebody's slacking out there, but usually in the dog days of summer or early February. Well, one thing Brian doesn't tell you is that he does this, this, and this. And I'm like, good luck with that. All right, we got two more, and then we'll shift gears. But one here says, always be yourself unless you run into another hardscape contractor. Then be the busiest, most booked out, profitable version of yourself. Oh, that's good. And then another one is, being a hardscaper is basically just texting other hardscapers back and forth saying stuff like, season is crazy and I'm so tired, until one of you dies. These are clutch, man. These are, it's so funny because like, it's just like lawn care guys are the same way, man. You're either, bitching about the heat or you're complaining about the rain. And it's like, yep, all right, dude, well, I got to go so I can get back to work, and it's just, we all live the same pains and same struggles, running our businesses. Yeah. And I guess I just find that your content is so funny because it's so relatable. And I'm thinking like what you just posted is what I thought 2 hours before, and it's just, it's really, really good stuff. If you guys aren't following him, again, make sure you guys follow Mike on Instagram at Paver King. But so let's do this really quick. We'll shift gears. Sorry for letting me just fanboy here a little bit on the feed, because you got some really funny content.
I'm happy that people. It's funny, like you put stuff out there, and I'm sure it's the same for you. And you don't really know what people think of it or what It's and just because something generates a lot of likes or a lot of views, or it doesn't. It's always nice to hear that people, because my account is based mostly around things that I think are funny. If people follow it, like
right.
I've had a long debate. I've had a lot of debate with it about should I do more videos about how we build stuff and stuff. And I'm like, man, there's so many people that are so good at that.
Right.
And I'm not good at those kind of videos. So I'm like, it's going to be me, and whatever.
Right.
If it doesn't,
Relate.
I think that, anyways, people ask me, I haven't done it in a while because of COVID, but, I used to do social media training for Landscape Ontario, and I've been to Alberta to do it. Sort of how to grow a social media following, and I always felt like if you're just being yourself, then people know you're being yourself, and that's a lot better than.
And I like that, because not only do like the other part, the other people in the community relate and follow that, because now you're not trying to sell them on anything, you're just being you, you're just being relatable. Frankly, that's how I try to operate a lot of my content the last couple of years. I know people make fun. I know we're not the smartest. I'm very honest with that. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to have fun, keep it light. I always say we treat the serious thing serious. The rest of it, we have fun and we poke fun. But I remember Gary Vee saying a couple years ago to F the numbers, like stop trying to get more likes and followers and subscribers and making money. Just like be you, be authentic, and be genuine. And that's how, if people relate to you out there in the marketplace, they'll follow along. And that's, I could give all these theories and formulas about how to grow your social media and, tactical things to do. But at the end of the day, it's like, just have fun, be yourself, and be relatable. And I think not only do other folks in the community feel that, but sort of your customers. If you're always like a robot upselling customers on things that you're trying to get done to make more money, like they can sniff that out. And if you offer practical solutions and fun things to your customers, they're more inclined to listen, feel like they weren't sold, they feel like they bought, right? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really good strategy with, not even a strategy, because that already sounds, like you're trying to do something, but it's just, being relatable out there. And so I think that's why you have a pretty authentic voice and also following that so many people enjoy watching along, and I know Andy Mulder loves your stuff because I see him, like and comment, and same thing with Caleb. He always talks really highly of you and all that fun stuff. But let me ask you this, maybe shifting gears here for a quick minute. For guys that want to get started in the industry, right? A lot of my audience are lawn maintenance guys. They're starting to do some more hardscaping and landscaping. You get the Hardscape Academy out there, right, with Caleb Allman, like great resource.
Absolutely. Amazing resource.
Yeah. I'm sure that so many of you guys like yourself in your position wish we all, myself included, had resources like that 20, 30 years ago when we were in our teens and 20s, What do you think were some of the best things that you listened or learned or got access to? Like any good pieces of information or pearls of wisdom that can help that next generation get started doing, patios and working with brick pavers?
I think that, it's the hardest lesson to learn. I have a lot of these sayings, Caleb always, but one of the hardest lessons to learn is you can't shovel your way to a good price.
I remember that. That was good.
If your price is lousy from the beginning, and that relates to any business. I'm sure you can't cut faster and cut your way to a good price on a lawn.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that, that's a hard lesson to learn. It's hard to learn that, if you can't do it, you can't do it, and you have to say no. But that was something I learned right away was from someone that was much smarter than me was you can't shovel your way to a good price. The price has to be good from the beginning.
Yeah.
Another thing I learned is from a very good friend of mine, sitting around a table one night. He said, people don't call you for shit you don't have. And, cause I would say to him, I'd love to be in the trucking game, or I'd love to be doing this. And he'd be like, well, then buy a truck. And I'd be like, well, I don't have any customers for a truck. What am I going to do? Like, buy this truck. It's big payment. And he's like, people don't call you for shit you don't have, bro.
Right.
And, and I mean, when we bought our first triaxle, which was 2 years ago, like we had a plan, and I had a plan for a customer base, but obviously my phone wasn't ringing off the hook for a triaxle because we didn't have one. And once we had one and we had it out there and it started working, and I did have a couple base customers that had said they would support the truck if we got it. I did put out some feelers and have a business plan. I didn't just randomly buy a $100,000 truck.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's good.
That's
I think
really
that
good. Now, 2.5 years later, we just bought a brand new triaxle, which, is a much bigger investment. I think it was $250. And we bought a tandem bin truck this year. And now people are calling us because they know we're known now for having trucks. So people call us. And I think that there is a lot of truth in that statement. If you own a lawn care business and you want to become a landscape contractor, then you probably have to make some, or you want to have a landscape contract division. Maybe you need to make an investment in a tamper and a saw. And
that's good,
because if you don't have that stuff, it's hard it makes it harder for people to call you because you won't be known for it. When someone does call, you have to be prepared to answer the phone. That was a good life lesson for me that, people don't call you for shit you don't have. And it's like the most basic statement in the world.
No, it's really good actually. I'm just listening here. I just love being focused on conversations with you guys. So if I'm ever quiet, I'm listening here. And I've heard I heard you say that on Caleb's podcast, and Caleb says a lot of the same thing lately as well, which is you get known for what you do, and you get more known for the work that you do. He said it more eloquently on his podcast, but it was really good because he kept, he's saying like they're turning down all these little jobs that doesn't really fit their wheelhouse. They have a certain ticket for a job they need to do to make money, spend the investment in the office for, for example, it's going to take 5 or 10 hours to put together a quote for a $1,500 job, just like it is for a $15,000 job. And there's a lot of truth to that. I've heard people say that. I heard a talk once by a productivity guy, coach, and he had told a story about Donald Trump saying that way back in the day, saying if you're going to do a deal, do a big deal, because if you got to go through bankers and see properties and all this other stuff, you could spend that 10, 20 hours on a single family home, or you could spend that same thing on, a skyscraper or whatever. He said it's that same 20 hours, 30 hours invested. You just add a couple different zeros on it, but at least the deal is more worth it for the same time invested. I've always thought about that. And it was really, really insightful listening to the episode you did with Caleb about all those kind of statements. One that I remember from your guys's was you make more money with a pen than you do a shovel or something like that. Is that one of yours?
Yeah, that's one of my other statements too. Is that that's one of the things that I kind of have like a board, and I kind of put things up on it that and that's one thing I had up on my board for a long time was when I was pricing stuff. I was like, I can make a lot more money with. People come to me and they, people come to me and they say, oh, I want to. How can I successfully? What should I learn if I want to be a successful landscape contractor or any kind of business really? And I'm like, well, the most important thing you can do is learn sales.
Sure.
Because if you're not good at sales, you're going to end up selling by the lowest common denominator, which is price. And selling purely on price is just a recipe for a race to bankruptcy. So, which is well proven. Like I'm not the first person to say that. I'm sure you've said it before. We've all said it. Like it doesn't. But it is absolutely the truth that if you don't get your sales game in order, and that's one of the first things I did. I spent a lot of time learning how to build rapport with people, because it's really building rapport with people. If you can get someone to buy you and buy your brand, they will pay a lot more for that than anything else. Or we used to, when I was selling at Lake Ridge, I didn't sell landscaping. I sold the Lake Ridge experience. From the outset, we laid it down as an experience. You hiring us and us renovating your backyard is an experience. It's a positive experience from start to finish. And we sold an experience. And that way we weren't competing with someone who was selling outdoor living or selling, we were selling a complete experience from start to finish. And I still sell that way. I think that spending more time learning how to sell will always benefit people in the end, more than people spend so much time debating about a certain piece of equipment. And, to me, I think equipment is obviously massively important, but if you can't sell for a good number, it doesn't matter what you own. You won't make a penny.
So good. That's good.
It's one of my previous guys that he owned half of a company that I worked for, and he's a gruff guy, but he would always say there's famous quote, and he's a very wealthy guy. He's been very successful, and his whole business is based off, there's never a bad job. There's only a bad price. And if you're doing something and you don't like it and you think it's a lousy job, you priced it too low. And he just based and I do that now all the time. Like I also keep a lot of records of stuff I've done in the past, so that like if I get to a job that's similar and I'm like, oh, last time I did a walkout, it really sucked. And I'm like, well, why did it suck? And then I'll go back and I'll go through my numbers and be like, oh, it sucked because I didn't charge enough for it.
Dude,
didn't make it worthwhile.
That's so good. That is so good. I've said that once on a podcast last summer, and I doubt anybody remembers it. I remember it being good for me because I said, if you're mowing a lawn and you hate that lawn, yes, the lawn could suck, it grows too fast, it's always wet, whatever, right? 100 different variables. But I had noticed that the lawns I didn't enjoy doing were the ones I didn't make any money on. And you're like, well, it seems so like selfish or just cutthroat or whatever. I don't even know how to articulate it. I don't care. I just remember like, I'm not making any money on this lawn. I hate doing it, but I didn't hate doing the work because if I got paid what I'm supposed to for an appropriate rate, I wouldn't mind doing the work. Like even if it was a really crappy job, and it took 3 extra hours, but I got compensated for that extra 3 hours, well, then who cares? It's just part of the process of that crappy job. Like, it's going to be a crappy job. And all these lines like that you say are really good. I hope that you put out more content so I can learn more. One thing that similar but different, I heard somebody I was just doing a coaching call with had said, which I remember hearing way back in the day with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he said, like a good deal is like a house or something like that. He said it way better, more articulate, right? But he said a good deal isn't one where you like buy it and then try to make money with it. It has to make money out of the gate. And, you know, they were talking about rental properties, I believe, at that time. But if you buy a house and it's not cash flowing off the bat, there's very unlikely any grand work you're going to do to start making money with it, you know. And so if it's cash flowing $200, you can get to the $300 or $400. But if it's not cash flowing and you think you're going to fix it up and try to, you know, that might be a harder road to hoe, you know. So no, do all these statements and sayings just come from real life experiences, or do you have any mentors or anybody that you know poured all this good stuff into you? Or where, I mean, obviously you got 25, 30 years under your belt. So
I worked for a couple pretty successful guys in my life, and I worked closely with them.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of stuff too from them about how not to behave and things not to do as well. You know, it's just, they both had different ways about them and said different things. And I just, whenever someone says something to me, I try to process, is that something that is that something I can apply to myself? You know, that I think that some of them too are so simple that I'm like, man, I can't believe I didn't think of that. I'm so disappointed in myself.
Sure.
You know, even something as simple as people don't, you know, if you want to cut soccer fields and all you have is a push mower, probably no one's going to call you to cut soccer fields. Same as, like, you know, no one used to call me for 22 ton of gravel because all I had was a dump trailer. You know, I think that stuff is so, some of it is just one statement. You know, I think if I could leave anything with anyone, though, it's definitely that you got to get better at sales. The better you are at sales, the more successful you'll be.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
I spent a lot of time.
Okay.
Oh no, I spent a lot of time reading books, and I was talking about earlier. I didn't really finish that part of it. Like, so say, like, when I was teaching myself how to build rapport with people, like immediate rapport with people, I used to go to a different coffee shop start of every week on Monday, and I would, you know, plan to walk in, and, you know, at the general coffee shop, the people that are there at 5:30 in the morning or 6 o'clock when all of us are up are the people that are there every day, right? Like, they're always the same people, usually on shift. So I would go in there on Monday and I would make an order, and if they didn't know my order by Friday without me having to say it, then I failed. Because that was how I practiced building rapport with people.
Amen.
People getting to know me immediately. And I did it for years and years, getting better and better at. So now I feel like, and it's a skill that I have in my back pocket, is that if I go to meet someone, I can almost instantaneously build a rapport with them. I don't know if you saw, but there was a big thing online. There's like a how to Hardscape account. They do like a group chat, and we were talking about something one day, and I said, like, for me, like, the key indicator at a landscape job is the front door. You know, like, I walk up to the house, I look at the front door. If someone's got a $10,000 front door or clearly has an expensive front door, then you know you're in a good place.
Right.
Because who spends money on their front door? Like, lots of people buy Mercedes, they can't afford it.
Dude, you know, I gotta interrupt you, because that's a really interesting thought, because we just got a quote, not our quote, but our whole build out, you know, for our home, the quote or whatever you call it, and our front door, dude, I'm not even gonna tell you, it's insane, it's insane. And I said, that's how much a door is, but he goes, well, that's the front door. He goes, don't forget you got the side door, and I went to Liz, I said, that is more money than that is a lot of money for a door. And she goes, yeah. She goes, the front doors are nice. And I said, well, not any front door. You know, I had my double wide trailer, you know, a little, I don't know, laminated metal little style door. I don't even know what that thing is, you know, wood door. And this door is, it's so stupid. I'm like, how is that door that much money? He must have clearly put a zero in the wrong place, right? One of those deals, Mike. And she goes, that's like a nice door, but she goes, it can even go from there. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah, that, like, you could spend 5 times on that on a door. I'm like, it's a door, but I don't know. It's just so weird, because this is the first time we're building a nice home and, you know, living in a nice home to be. And so the indicator of the door is just a little bit nicer home, nicer subdivisions, or just people that have, I guess, a little bit more money, or what's your way to break that down.
So, I mean, for me, if you look at someone's front door and it's clearly someone's put effort and time into it, it's just, for me, that's the immediate rapport builder. As soon as they open the door, I'm like, man, I love your door. People are like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I just love the modern lines of it. It's sick. It looks great.
Huh.
Well, we could transfer that into a patio. They're like, oh, wow, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
It's an icebreaker. It's other things I do too is like I immediately look at the floor, and because whatever shoes are lying at the front door, you can get a good feel immediately for who lives in that house.
Yeah.
If there's 2 or 3 different sizes of kids' shoes, you're like, oh, there's 3 kids here. Like, oh, so are you guys looking to have a place to play in the backyard? Or, if there's no men's shoes and it's only women's shoes and no kids' shoes. I mean, I track. I used to. I don't anymore. But back in the day when I was trying to, sort of master the sales game, I used to track who do I close the most with.
Right.
Because I would want to spend time on those quotes and stuff. And I know that, I've always had a really good closing rate with single women, which wasn't true for anything else in my life. So I'm thankful that it's true for landscaping, I guess, because it wasn't true in high school.
Sure.
So if I was at a house and I noticed, oh, there's no male shoes, there's no kids shoes. And, you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a good opportunity for me. This is maybe somewhere where I spend an extra 15 minutes because I know that my closing rate is high here. There's a lot of information you can take in without mess there. And
that's good.
Sometimes in where we are, there's people, like neighborhoods are flipping over, right? So if you end up in a house going to a neighborhood where maybe that neighborhood doesn't have the best reputation, but you walk up to the house and it has like a brand new front door that's obviously expensive and someone spent some time on, you're like, okay, well, maybe this is, it's always great to be part of the first, couple flip houses in a neighborhood, in my experience.
Yeah. I read I read a lot of books as well, which thank God, because I was a moron, for 10 years. And I remember in a sales book, I forget what it was, but it was some correlation between like how a guy takes care of his shoes is how he'll take care of certain like needs for his wife. How a wife takes care of her, her purses or her bags is how she'll take care of his something else. And like I've noticed people, like if you have a clean car inside, it's usually reflective that you're like a clean person for the most of your stuff. But if you have a trashed vehicle or your employees are trash, they're going to treat your equipment like trash, and this is like really good conversation actually to me, because this is like the stuff that I intentionally had to get better at for so long, like building rapport. That's huge. Like breaking down walls, especially when you're selling. We're all selling all day long, right? Winning friends and influencing people. With Dale Carnegie, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I have read all of those books 10 times over, and getting to make people feel at ease and getting people to laugh and disarming folks and selling but not selling. And we're all in the business of selling, whether it's lawn maintenance for $40 or a patio for $40,000. These skills are, universal. And I like how you said earlier, it's a skill, not a talent, and you were reading books to learn how to become better at sales and communication and building rapport. I think
that's
huge.
I think there's an argument to be made that getting $45 instead of $40 to cut a lawn is harder than getting $45,000 instead of $40 for a patio.
I will agree to that. I think so.
I think that it's you're selling a service, and it depends on what value people on it and what story you can build around it. So,
and the experience,
there's a lot, and the experience. Yeah. It's one of the things I do with all our quotes, meticulously, and I have for years, and I don't know how it would work in your guys' business. Maybe it'd be a little bit different, but I always put something to like the penny. Because like if I work through a quote and the patio is $9,000, and then I'll make it $9,185.56. Because in my experience, homeowners will look at that and be like, man, this guy spent some real time on this.
Right.
Like, this guy really broke down these numbers for me. Like, he's really working to his best price.
Yep.
I'd be interested to see what would happen if you said to someone, cutting your lawn is $44.68.
You know,
just to see, oh, well, he must know his cost. He knows for sure that that's what it's worth. You know, I would be interested to see how that would work.
That is something where I don't know if that's like an insider thing for all of us listening in, but that is one thing where I was talking about that last summer. My friend Paul Jameson was talking about that last summer, which was so many guys would end their lawn business numbers, you know, the mowing price on a 0 or a 5. And it's like, it's $40 or $45, or that cut is $65. And it's like, why is it not $67.50? And really, the bottom line is that you should know exactly the dollar you need to make per man hour. And it could be 68, or, you know, a cut should be $38 or $37. Why is it always 35 or 40 or 45, right? And if you just have all this blanket flat pricing, it might be a sign, hate it or like it, with what I say next, that you haven't dialed in your business to know the exact number that you need to be making on that exact property, because every lawn should not be 40, every lawn should not be 45, you know? And I always say, like, my favorite tool, Mike, is a stopwatch. And that has really helped me dial in my pricing, always dialing in my pricing. Little side tangent there, you know? And so, and also if you do a 32-yard mulch job, and you're doing it for $100 a yard installed or whatever, I always say, don't wrap it up at $3,200, wrap it up at $3,195 or $3,175 or $3,210, you know, like, have some, because it just, like you said, it just seems like the customer is able to stomach that so much easier. Because like you said, they're like, oh, he's not just, hey, how much for a patio? $8,000, $20,000, you know? It's like, it should be a more exact figured out number anyway, but I think it's just easier for customers to digest that when they think you actually spent more time on a quote than just, you know, giving them a blanket rate and making who knows what percentage profit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in terms of you're talking about the 5 and 10 sort of thing there. Like, for a long time, I don't work out a price based on square foot. It's man hours, cost of materials, blah, blah. So
sure.
I mean, I could talk about that. That's a whole different hour.
Yeah.
But I get to the end and say my price is 31,000. I'm like, okay, well, that's a sucky number. So, like, you know, I'll go back through and be like, okay, I need to get it to like 29 change, because people will read that differently than 31,000.
Sure.
You know, where can I put some savings in? Likewise, for a long time, if I'm, say, between 35 and say my price ends up at 36, and I'm, you know, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm at 36, like, is someone not going to hire me at 38? Like, really?
Right.
Because, you know, I'm between 35 and 40 here. You know, it's a large, like, you know, I don't think anyone, either you're going to hire me or you're not. So once I kind of cross that 5 to 10 barrier, there are times I round up too, just because I'm like, okay, because if you add all that up at the end of the year, you know, it doesn't work out for every job. Let's say I did 30 jobs and 15 of them, I had the ability to round up $1,000
sure,
just to get in between that 30, 35 and 40. Well, now I have $15,000, and, you know, people, you know, doesn't seem like a lot of money when you do it once in a while, but when you add it all up at the end of the year, I'm like, well, I'd rather have $15,000 than all these people having $15,000. That's just, you know, that's the trucking game is a similar. I think that the trucking game is more similar to the lawn care game than landscaping.
Okay.
The trucking game is all sort of like that. It's, you know, I'm staring at I have trucking rates for 2021 in my desk. I'm sitting in the office and I'm looking at it and I'm like, here's me like talking about this to you. And I'm like, A gravel, $450 per load, HVB, $575 per load. I'm like, Mike, like, when you're talking about this on podcast and right in front of your face is like a prime example of what you're telling people not to do. Like, it's, you know, I think it's the same kind of thing almost.
Yeah.
Trucking is very like, you got to really watch yourself with trucks.
Yep.
It's a different game. And it's a lot about where you are at the end of the year and adding everything up, and you don't get, I think that hardscaping, you can hit hardscaping, I feel like you can hit a home run, you know, like I used to say that all the time. Like, you know, when in the first carnation of working for myself, which was called home and landscape restoration. I used to set up singles all month. I'd have all these jobs, and I'd be like, they were like little, back then they were $3,000 front walkways, 5 of them a week, one every day for the whole week for a month. And then we'd get to the end of the month, and I'd be like, okay, this is my home run job, because this is when all my payments are coming out. And so we'd go and we'd bang out that home run job, and I'd try to have at least one home run job a month so that I knew we'd be okay. Instead of a steady amount of, now I would say that I aim more for a steady amount of doubles and triples, and I don't worry. I mean, home run's great, but I try to stay away from singles, and I sort of what Caleb was saying, just in a baseball reference, I guess.
100%. Saying no more
same
often.
Kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
But for trucking is just hitting a single every single day.
Is that right?
It's just that's what it is.
That's fair.
The trucks are worth what they're worth, and that's okay. I love the trucks. They're my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
People, when we bought the brand new Triaxle, I got a lot of DMs about it, because we only have 2 drivers and we have 3 trucks, which I think is a practical business plan, because I don't want one of the trucks is almost always broken. They're big, they move heavy stuff, they break a lot.
Okay.
So, having 2 drivers for 3 trucks, and I have a buddy who owns a whole fleet of trucks, and I said, how do you do it? He's like, I got to have one more driver trucks than you have drivers, and it'll never work out. I'm like, okay, good. Because if you don't have anything for drivers to do, and when we bought the new truck, I got a lot of DMs about it, because it's a big purchase. It's $240,000 truck.
Wow.
And people are like, oh, you don't even have a driver for it, and you're going to park it in the yard, and a lot of mishmash. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, hey, to me, I love the truck. Like, I love it as much as you love your Corvette or your Mustang or whatever you have. That truck, to me, like when I see it in the yard, that's my thing.
Yeah.
It just happens to be a dump truck instead of a. That part of the business I love, but it is a lot more just sort of hitting singles and trying to manipulate things so you can get in an extra load, or it's a different kind of fuel. We dig a lot of pools.
Okay.
We have a couple really good pool clients that dig into the trucks, and pool digging is like the greatest thing, because it takes quite a while to load the truck, because the dirt's coming out of the backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not burning as much fuel.
There you go. There you go.
On a heavy day, one of those trucks might burn $300 worth of fuel.
Wow,
so,
that's crazy.
It is. If you
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, if you can find a job where, it's like the most profitable thing you will ever do in your life, this is another saying, is getting paid for work you don't do. You will never find more profitable thing than getting paid for work you don't do. So if you can find a way that your truck is sitting, not rolling, not burning any fuel, getting loaded for the maximum amount of time, you're getting paid for work you don't do. You're not burning any fuel. You're not putting any wear and tear on the truck. That will be the most profitable work you will ever do.
Sure.
It's the same for anything, I guess. That was a saying we used to have all the time, is getting paid for work you never do is absolutely the most profitable thing.
Yeah, one thing that, practically speaking, for lawn care guys that so few people want to do, and I get it because it sucks, is pulling weeds. And I know everybody wants to turn off the podcast now and pulling weeds, Fullerton. What are you talking about? But I'm like, hey, we bill for $75 an hour. I have an employee out there for $15 or $18 or $20 an hour. There's no equipment other than a tool, weeding tool. And we're making 40, 50, 60 bucks an hour on that. And I'm like, the trucks aren't moving. Nothing's moving. We're just peacefully pulling weeds. And, people scoff at that because they're like, well, I want a Toro Dingo, and I want to lay pavers, and I want a right ZK, and I want to make noise, and I want to move. And I'm like, awesome. Well, I'm going to go weed this whole property for 8 hours, make $500, or send my employee out, make $500. And it's like a little hidden gem. I'm not above it. I Mr. YouTube, Mr. And I'm like, hey, I don't mind pulling weeds. I'm not above it. I'll go out there at 6 a.m. for an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning and go do that. And do I want to do it forever? No. But it's a great little revenue source for us. I just did a YouTube video a couple of weeks back where we log 5 to 10 hours a month in weeding at a minimum, and it's good money. it's crazy if you think about it, because nowadays we're all like, man, if I'm not making $100 an hour, $200 an hour, and maybe your company does need to make that to stay in business, right? I get it. Or $1,000 an hour, right? I get that. But at the same point, don't neglect somebody going out there for 10, 20 hours pulling weeds if there's some downtime, and just being able to bring in some revenue with very little overhead. I'm not above it. I love doing that kind of stuff. Hey, one other quick question for you. And just like two minutes, because we'll wrap this up so I don't take your whole afternoon here, because we really appreciate you taking time to be on the show. For sure. And this is just a fun conversation. I know there's a lot of fun stuff you put out there, and like you said, ruffling feathers, and it's just good or bad, of course. It's just a good time, and keeping it light. But there's, practically speaking, like a lot of good things that you're saying, that you do put out there, of course. And one thing that I wanted to double dip on was, before we hit record, because I said, hey, Mike, do you listen to the show? And I said, if you don't, it's totally cool. I don't expect anybody to, or take it for granted if somebody does. Like, I'm so thankful for anybody who ever listens to the show one time, right? And you said, yeah, I listened to the show for sure. There was actually a really good one that I caught a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about how I had some really difficult clients. My first, 2 to 8, maybe 10 years in business was all my trailer park clients. And it's just something that I wanted to revisit for a quick minute, and it doesn't need to be, super in-depth conversation, but you had said that you totally related with that episode so much, even though, if you guys are listening in, it wasn't like some, cool interview with, Paver King or Andy Mulder or, Caleb or somebody else, right? It was just a solo episode where I'm like, you want to know why I'm all high strung and high stressed out? Because I had 10 years of expectation on me from these customers that, quite honestly, weren't really deserving, because they weren't really paying. In fact, they were paying a lot less, and their expectations were like meteoric. And it really messed me up my first 10 years. I was doing a lot of trailer park customers, and they're not bad people by any means, but the economic situation there was, I was doing a trailer park lawn for $15, and they thought, they were, it was some massive gardens, at, Buckingham Palace over here. And it just messed me up. And you were saying you related to that because you had a lot of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had so many similar stories your first couple, years or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, man, it does mess you up,
I think that, for me, the relatable thing was the lift and relay, a driveway where there's a couple ruts and people are like, oh, we need you to lift the ruts out. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not super achievable. Like, it's never going to look perfect. But then people have this expectation of, they want you to lift 50 square feet in 2 ruts, but they want the whole 2,000 square foot driveway to look brand new. And I think just when you were talking about, specifically when you were talking about the aluminum trim and the, or the steel coming down and clipping it with the
weed whip,
the trimmer.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like that is like, for us, it would have been like, oh, look, because pavers move downwards and they move for pressure. And when you go to put them back, you're putting them back tight and you end up with weird gaps and it doesn't work properly. And people just had this expectation of, I think too, you were talking about pressure washing once.
Yeah.
And it related to me because I had this job when we very first started. We lifted and laid a whole driveway, and one of the items was sealing the driveway. I'd never done it before, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to seal this driveway. It's going to be sick. And man, like, we sealed the driveway and sealed the driveway and the guy was just never happy. We could never meet his expectations, and it just happened to be the first sealing thing I ever did in my whole life.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm never doing that again.
Yep. And
I still to this day have never sealed anything. And when I listened to you talk about I was like, man, maybe I should seal something. I had just a horrible experience right off. And that's the same with that. There's the stories it was just so relatable compared to like experiences I had that had sort of tainted me to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you also have to learn. It takes a lot. Those clients are really valuable to the start of any business because it's where you learn how to shut down people's expectations, and you either survive or you don't.
Amen.
Like if you don't figure out how to shut down people's expectations, you're not going to survive. That's just the truth of the matter. So you have to learn how to manage that. And I think that those clients, the clients you have now are because of the clients you had. That's my
amen.
The people that we deal with now on our landscaping side, it's the accumulation of 30 years of dealing with people and learning how to weed people out. And I mean, Nancy and I have been to calls where I've gone and we've been there for 5 minutes and I just say, yeah, this isn't for us. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, just a bad feeling, or I'm like, this isn't a project for me, or, I think too, though, recently, for a long time, I never did anything around pools. I did a lot of pool work for a while. It's a lot with like electrical and pool contractors, and there's so much stuff and so many people. And I was like, after a few years of it, I was just like, okay, we're not touching a pool again. Someone calls, they want a pool, we're out.
Okay.
We are out. We are building patios. We are not doing any of that stuff. And at the start of this year, last fall, we had a previous client call and they decided they wanted a pool, and I kind of went down that road. And this whole job has been just a reminder in the back of my brain about why I made that decision 10 years ago. So I think that even when you learn, sometimes you have to relearn, why you made those decisions. And this particular project, through no one's fault.
Yep.
I don't think it's anyone's fault. They're very complex projects, and you miss something, and there's no one to blame, other than perhaps me for walking down that road again. But yeah, those clients, you learn so much from them, and they are so valuable. But then, there has to come a time where you have to learn to just say, sorry, it's not practical for my business anymore.
Right. Yeah, that was my friend Paul that was doing the pressure washing. He had talked about with the Green Industry podcast, how he had that pressure washing client that spun him through a loop, and Paul was just like embarrassed and didn't pick up the pressure washer, for 10, 12 years later, and yeah, it's just, I guess the culmination of that whole thought was, and I'm sure you guys have seen the same one, and it was the $50,000 one. It's like a meme on Instagram where one client, hey, I'm sending you this money. I would like to know how your life and my life will forever be entwined, and my expectation is to have the most beautiful whatever. I just want to let you know the severity of this transaction and look forward to your daily updates. Like that's client A. And then that was for like $500, I think it was. And then the other part was like client B, just wired the $50,000 over. Let me know when it's done. And like, the expectations of those two clients, one's the $500 client, and it's like this massive investment in life transforming process. And we deal with this stuff all the freaking time. And that's one type of client that's out there. And those clients will literally beat you down, and you will literally hate what you do for a living. And to Mike's credit, like, you get started with those people, but you don't have to stay with those kind of people. And by learning all these life skills and keeping your head on a swivel, you can learn, hey, right off the bat, is this a client A or a client B? Because there's times now, like, I'm starting to make a few more bucks. Our family's starting to make a couple more bucks. Like, we're getting older, and there's times where something's $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and I'm like, go for it. Awesome. Cool. Like, money sent, checks in the mail. Like, I just wrote a big check to a friend of mine the other day, and didn't even think about it. Didn't even care. We were just getting breakfast, wrote him a big check. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, because I trust him, he trusts me, and my time's more valuable, I can just make that a priority. And then there's other times where somebody calls me as a contractor for a mulch job, and they're like, whoa, I can get it installed or delivered, and can you guys just install it? And, $800, the last guy quoted me $350. And it's just like, those people literally make you hate the business. And that's from mowing and mulch to, I'm sure, $30,000, $50,000 patios or even more that you guys do.
I have a saying for this whole thing too, which you make the most money per season from the jobs you don't take. which is kind of complex. But, we had this theory that opportunities would always arise. And if we're busy doing crappy work that we should not be involved in and we shouldn't take, we're losing out on those opportunities because we don't have available resources to complete the work. Mm-hmm. And you have to be kind of an optimist and you have to believe in yourself and believe in your company if you want to run that way. But I have a friend who's an inspirational guy. I talk to him once a week, and he's such a good friend of mine now. And he owns a hardscaping company, and he's never more than like 3 or 4 weeks booked out. And it allows him to take, like, if you talk to most hardscaping companies, they're booked months in advance.
Sure.
They're all booking, and he runs his business completely the opposite because he believes in himself, he believes in his company, and he believes that the best opportunities will come up and he will be available for them. And to me, he's got the biggest set on the planet. I got so much respect for it, but it works and it's true. And I mean, we used to do that when I was bidding work at Lake Ridge, and we were bidding commercial work, and and sometimes we'd look at stuff and I'd be like, okay, well, like if we're absorbed on this project in, Mississauga, that's an hour and a half worth of travel from us, we could miss opportunities that are 15 or 20 minutes from us this fall when all the work comes out. So we were, the whole saying that, you make the most money off the work you never do. It's just, you have to look at it in a subtly different way, and you have to say, will my resources be able to take advantage of the opportunity?
Right.
Because all of us are running on a limited amount of resources.
So good. I remember on your episode with Caleb, and Caleb said it on a couple episodes as well, Kid Contractor podcast, that he said there's jobs that you shouldn't be doing that you don't find enjoyable. They're holding over your head, right? Like a dark cloud. And I don't know, like sometimes things just happen, who knows? But I said yes to a mulch job, a landscape job. I don't know, it would have been like 8 yards, bed redefining, a bunch of detail work, like really, really tight beds. Everything was going to be like, you couldn't even get a wheelbarrow 6 feet deep into the landscape bed. Like it was just going to be buckets and hand delivering or hand installing mulch, detail work, we call it. And, I don't even know why I said yes. The customer is like, hey, the last couple guys all, dipped out. Our regular guy that does it, he's not available. Another guy's not even doing anymore. She's like, can you do it? And I'm like, nah. She goes, please, I have nobody else. And I'm like, all right, sure. I said, it's going to be about a month, but I'll do it, but it's going to be a month. And she said, no problem. I'll wait. Just, I can't get anybody to call me. And as soon as I said yes, like, and I was just being nice. I am a people pleaser. And as soon as I walked away, I was like, I don't want to do this. And then through the whole month of June, I was like, I don't want to do this job. We don't have the time. We had, 30 plus rain days in the last like 60 days. It's been nuts, and I just told her, I just said, you know what? I called her back like 3 weeks later and I said, and the thing is, she's a really good customer of mine. Lawn, snow, we do a lot of work with her anyway, but I said, we just can't do it. I said, I'll be honest with you, I overextended myself. I'm overbooked. I said, we can barely make headway. I had an employee, we thought we had a COVID scare. He quit. I said, I'm having a baby in 8 weeks. Sorry, can't do it. And I felt awful, like I was dropping the ball. But at the same point, like I had to make sure like my ship didn't sink. You know what I mean? And I don't know if this story's making any sense, but I try to relate it back to what you said, like, don't do things that you shouldn't be doing or don't want to do. Like you still own your company, not the John Q public.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
People spend a lot of time. I mean, there's we have a couple of really big clients, and when they call me, I have a policy, and all of us that work at Paver King, all of us on the team, we know the policy is if we have one really big client in particular, and when he calls, no matter what it is, we go and do it.
Sure.
No questions asked.
Sure.
But likewise, in that relationship, when I call, he helps us infinitely with tons of things as well. So sometimes we end up doing things we don't want to do, but like on the residential side, I'm super careful about, I don't have no problem with building shed pads, if it's part of a whole landscape package, but we don't just build a shed pad.
Sure.
It's just not practical for us. I can't charge enough to do it, to organize it, to spend it's not a good use of our assets.
Right. Right.
So I think that's when you were talking about Caleb saying you got to find the sweet spot for you, I think it's sort of the same thing. You have to find stuff that your staff is. This is kind of off topic, but one of the hardest lessons I learned in pricing work was, so when I was working for myself with Kaz, we were on site every day. We had a couple good staff members, and I priced work based on the speed that we did work because we were the crew.
Right.
When I left that business and ended up starting to build Lakeridge Residential, I was in charge of, finding pricing, designing the work. And the first couple jobs, it was like someone was beating me with a hammer. I was like, man, I am not making any, I used to make good money doing this. And
yeah.
I'm like, man, I know.
I remember you talking about this.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
What is going on here? It's like I'm being punched in the face every job. And then I realized, okay, well, the crew I have doing the residential work, running those residential crews was part of my job, but not my whole job. So, I was there periodically 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe I work a day with them, but I wasn't there all the time. And I concluded that I have to price to who I have. And I was like, okay, these guys work at this speed. So, I kept track of it for a couple of jobs, and then we started pricing to the crew we had. And then we kind of turned it around and got it back into where the margin should have been. But my problem was I was pricing it like I was personally doing the work, when really the guys that were doing the work were, not as invested as an owner, which is fair.
Right.
Absolutely fair. I don't think that's an issue. If you have someone who works on your team that's not as invested as you, I don't think that's something that should be totally discouraging. It's your company. You should be more invested than them. So maybe they're not as fast, or maybe they don't have the same skill set or the same amount of experience. And so pricing who you have is absolutely, to me, one of the keys, because I think a lot of people, as their business grows and expand, they price it like they're doing the work personally.
Right. That's good.
The reality is that, personally, you're probably doing it faster. Maybe you have more experience. I'm sure there's people who hire someone and they're like, man, this person is way better than me.
He's a rock star. Yeah.
We're doing better now that I'm not involved in the field. I didn't have that experience, but there's other people that do. So I think that, one of the things if people are looking to grow is pricing who you have doing the work, because if industry standard says that job is worth $1,000, but the people you have doing the work, the job's worth $1,500. Pricing it for $1,000 isn't going to help you. You have to figure out how to sell it for $1,500 or you're sunk, because just saying it's the industry standard won't work.
So
it
good.
Doesn't, right now, our crew is old. We're all old. Kaz is 61. I'm almost 50. Brian's 50 this year. Jay's 51. It's like a bunch of 50-year-old landscapers and Lucas.
Right.
Who works on our team, who's like 29.
You're using those I don't know what they call the crane things, with the air compressor that
yeah. I got a lot of hate for
that. I know. I don't know anything about hardscaping, but I know you're getting made fun of because you guys are using that, and you're like, hey, I'm 50, man. I'm not 25, young buck, and any which way.
That was one of my favorite. That whole thing. I don't know if you saw it. The whole thing where I was like, can everyone go back to harassing Caleb for putting pavers on concrete? That was honestly, and then he came back at me that he was getting heat for something this week, and he was like, remember that time that paver? And I was like, this is one of my favorite, of all the interactions I've had online.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite interactions, because this is just shifting the hate back and forth.
Yeah.
It's so funny that, and he was the perfect person to do. And
yeah.
I spend a lot of time pricing.
Well, he was doing the direct overlay, right? Job, I think it was called. Yeah. And see, like I love all you hardscape guys. I'm a mow and blow guy, but don't show us, don't not show us some love, because I live vicariously through you guys, and you guys were just going back and forth. I was loving it. I'm like, dude, like, we don't know each other in person, but I get to follow you guys along online, and hopefully, meet everybody one day at, live events or GIE or whatever. Right. And, but I was laughing so hard because, Caleb was like talking about this whole exchange, and I was like, oh, I was following it. And he goes, well, I had to send people back to Paver King because he was using this buggy with the lift, and, people just making fun of you. And I just was like, the Hardscape cartel, man, you guys are tight,
It's a funny, but I've learned, when I started 3 years ago, again, pricing work, our crew is old, and we're just not as fast as we used to be. I think we do a great quality of work, and I think we supply an amazing experience to our clients. And I think that our clients are willing to pay a bit more because of our age and our experience and the level of service we provide. So but I'm very careful because we're just not going to slam down 20 skids, 20 bundles a day of pavers like maybe we used to.
Right.
We're not going to work every Saturday and every Sunday for 12 hours a day anymore. We're not capable of it. It's not part of what we can do. If it's super crazy hot, then some days, lunch is 45 minutes instead of half an hour because we need that recovery time. And so I'm very careful about pricing who we are today.
I like
it as a group.
So know your company, know your business.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like,
know
I mean,
people.
This is good conversation. I'd love to get you back on the show. We can talk, X's and O's and how to's and equipment. I don't want to take your whole afternoon here. You already gave us way more time than we deserve on this show because you're a great person, and I know you have just a servant's heart, with wanting to help people, give back, and of course, have your twang on it and your personality as well. So it's always it's just really cool to hear your story more and get to know you more, frankly. And shout out to Caleb and the Hardscape Academy. They turned me on to you. I follow them on Instagram, and then led down to the rabbit hole to guys like Josh Sutton, Andy Mulder, Mike over here. So it's just really cool to see what you guys are doing. But if again, little plug here, if you haven't got to catch up with Mr. Paver King here, make sure you guys follow him at Paver_King. And I think you guys will really enjoy following his feed, his stories. I was just literally laughing. I was getting sad at church this morning, and 11:59, we're about to praise and worship, and at 11:59 I'm on my phone on Instagram, and you were just you had said something about the text message one, and I'm like, is this guy in my DMs and in my tweets, like in my text messages? Because I think I literally text somebody what you had posted like 2 hours before this morning. So praise and worship started, and I'm the only one chuckling like an idiot, in the whole sanctuary. So it was pretty funny. But my wife's like, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "You wouldn't get it. So anyway, you wouldn't get it. But make it a point, guys, if you're listening in to give Mike a follow. And Mike, anything else you want to cover really quick while we got you? If not, we'll button this thing up. But seriously, thank you for taking time to be on the show this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you guys calling me. I always like doing it. I wish that I had the energy that you and Caleb had to do the podcast, and have a heart. Like, I think that they're amazing. I think it's an amazing resource. I wish when I was anyone who's not listening to this kind of stuff and finding one thing I think is crazy. There's so many lessons that you can. I think you only learn by doing things, but maybe you'll do them less repetitively if you listen.
Sure.
You'll probably do it once, no matter what anyone says to you, but at least you might do it less times.
Amen.
I'm thankful that you guys do that and that you guys would have me on. Honestly, man, I appreciate it. I would come back anytime, talk about anything you want.
Yeah.
Anytime you want. Always, man.
Well,
I always have time.
I super appreciate it, and 100%. Pleasure's all ours on this end, and I know everybody listening right now, whether they're laying pavers or they're mowing grass, we always appreciate the content to listen to. I know these guys do, and all the effort that goes into it. So No, and by the way, one way, shape, or form, I mean, you guys are only a couple hours north of us. I know I'm going to be going to Niagara Falls sometime here in the fall, little family trip. And so, where you guys are at isn't that far away, so might be able to make a trip and catch you in real life, or see you at our event or GIE or wherever, something hardscape related, some other live event or a Techo Block event, whatever. I don't even know. But one day we'll get to shake hands. But in the meantime, in all sincerity, thanks for taking time to be on the show today.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, we'll button it up right here. Thanks again to Mike Pennington for being on the show, Mr. Paver King over here. If you guys aren't following along, make sure you guys do on Instagram. And if you guys enjoyed the show, shoot him some DMs. Say thanks for taking almost an hour and a half on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon to put this together. And we don't take it for granted. So if you guys want to share it on Instagram, tag it, share it with another lawn bro or another part of the hardscape cartel, as they say, we please do so. We always appreciate the organic support, but we'll button up right here. Guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Fullerton Unfiltered. And guys, we look forward to catching up with you here on the next one.
Hey guys, I'm here at Mr. Producer's bunker. This is Paul Jameson. He stepped away for a moment, but I wanted to share about Launchpreneur Academy. I got my flight booked, ticket. I'm all ready to go, but we got one problem, Brian. That closet. Last year at the show, he put Naylor and I in the back room in the closet for our podcast marathon. So my request is that hopefully you can get us out in the open so we can podcast away at this year's Launchpreneur Academy. Uh-oh. What's that, Mr. Producer? Nothing.
You've heard Caleb and Brittany Allman talking about the Hardscape Academy, but have you checked it out for yourself? The hardscapeacademy.com is the place to get the skills and training you and your crew need to excel as a professional hardscaper. You'll learn all the techniques and best practices to properly install pavers and retaining walls. You'll have access to online video training courses, in-person apprenticeships, comprehensive guides, and customizable business forms. Plus, there are 2 free courses which cover everything slab, from initial planning to final installation, and again, those are absolutely free. If you're serious about mastering your skills, abilities, efficiency, and bottom line, the hardscapeacademy.com is for you, and that link is in today's show notes.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
This has been a Brian Fullerton and Mr. Producer production.